Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CDH. I am one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzors, and today I am joined by my co-hosts, Matt, aka Null,
What's
Reed,
up, everyone?
aka Sick Robot,
How you doing?
and Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going?
In this episode, we're going to be covering Wincons. We'll give a bit more of a breakdown of that. We're going to be covering Wincons and how to evaluate them and, how to
All that
decide
stuff.
whether or not it's good in your deck. Is it
The
playable?
Wincon stuff.
Yeah.
Can you realistically win with 1/1 dorks?
Yes. Okay, but before we get into that, what have you guys been up to since the last episode?
Well,
World of
I finally
Warcraft
did
from
it.
Reed. Yeah.
well, yes, that too. I've been playing again way too much World of Warcraft. Not 60 yet. Disappointed in myself. Haven't been spending as much time as I wanted to, but
Come on, man.
we're getting there.
Stop slacking.
You're supposed
Oh,
to.
dude.
I think you're supposed to hit 60, and it's something like most people should be able to do it in 7 game days time. So whatever 24 hours times 7 is.
You tell me.
And I'm only at 6.5. So
You're still
I
got
think I'm gonna
time.
miss
You're
7
still
days.
young.
we'll see. Getting there. but I did get a webcam set up.
And you broke it in,
Yeah, it
right?
happened. I did. Got some games in. Been jamming a shit ton.
Did you win? You pub
Getting in with
stomping the
people?
noobs over on PlayDH?
Yeah, dude.
Nice.
Yeah, I got a few games. I think I'm above 25% right now.
Classic
Yeah.
Reed move right there.
Yeah.
Maintaining an above average win rate. Of course, when he's not playing with us, because,
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, obviously.
because we're just...
Yeah, we've learned our lessons.
Matt, Morgan.
Speaking of PlayDH, I was made a moderator over there. So
Okay, well, you know what? Stop bragging.
if you're afraid of me,
Leave
don't
the
go
server.
there, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
I have yet to abuse my power.
You
I'm
should be.
just waiting for an opportunity.
Dude, me and Morgan are just accruing roles. You guys gotta get in on this too. Get those colored names in all the servers.
Yeah, definitely.
Dude,
how
I
you
was-
win
so many-
a Discord
so many
server
hats.
is just having the most roles.
I was
There's not-
in competition with Morgan for having a lot of roles for a while, and then he just...
And then you were
he's-
not anymore.
He's killed me, yeah. I'm dead.
one thing that applied.
I just picture a Boy Scout sash with just a bunch of different rolls on it.
Yeah, they're
That's
basically
basically what it is.
they're about as valuable as Boy Scout badges.
Now Asperia badges, on the other hand. Yeah.
One other thing that I've been up to, that we've all been up to, was we had our, I guess, second Southern Ontario / GTA EDH meetup. So we're looking to do those monthly, and turnout was really good. I think we had 3 pods firing continuously for a little while.
and some leftovers.
Yeah,
yeah.
3 pods.
And those are lots of fun. So if you're in the GTA, we'll leave a link to the Facebook group where those are planned, and you can check them out if you're interested.
Yeah. So and they're going to be on weekends, and the idea is to do them once a month instead of every week. That way, gives chance for people who might want to do a longer drive out from wherever in Southern Ontario to make
Yeah,
out for one of these.
Well,
That's-
it gives
that's the idea.
it gives a date for everybody to make it out all in one day, and for everybody to hang out.
Yeah, really trying to foster the Southern Ontario CEDH community. Anything else, Morgan or Matt?
I had a brief suffering of playing through Elsha and drawing tons of lands. It
Oh,
was
yes.
absolutely the worst. Yeah. Yeah, when you build Elsha, don't put 60 lands in.
Yeah, usually not a good idea. And of
Yeah,
course,
that's
none of
about
them
it
were
for me.
fetches either, right? So you weren't getting any shuffling. Yeah.
Yeah. If they were fetches, there was definitely action.
Oh god. Hey man, they still shuffle. You can still clear the other ones off.
Yeah.
How many times did you see 3 lands off of top?
In a row or just it was like a ridiculous portion. Oh my gosh, I was so hyped to play Elsha, and then play the best card in the deck, and seeing 3 lands is heartbreaking.
As for me, I've been jamming. So I'm back at school, back with the Queen's Magic Club, and enjoying some mid-power games. Those are going pretty great. I built my Golos Tron deck, which tries to assemble EDH Tron, which is Cabal Coffers, Urborg, and Copy lands. And it's a Hidden Commander Iovugan deck. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
I
it's so
love that.
great.
dude, I'm enjoying it a lot. When you're making like 60 mana, and your only way to remove things is by like Eye of Ugin, finding Ulamog, and then like winding canyons to flash them in. That's your removal.
God.
It's pretty fun.
See,
And this is the first lesson in what makes a Wincon playable.
when we're not recording, Lyndon is like the most concerned about things being off topic, and then we start recording.
And
Golos Tron.
We are in
suddenly-
topic, man. This is the what have we been doing since last time. I'm allowed to say what I want about mid-power, okay? Get off my back. Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for this off-topic topic. So without further ado, let's get into housekeeping. So housekeeping notes, we have 2 new patrons. So we want to give big shout outs to Chris T.
And Jordan K.
Hooray! Woo!
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dude, I've been listening to the command zone too much. I was about to say, you rock.
That's copyrighted. Our lawyers will be contacting you.
Yeah, holy shit. Cease and desist in the mail.
Jesus.
Oh, that's what
Yeah.
everyone said
Yeah,
on the
dude.
podcast.
But yeah, big shout outs to our patrons.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, all tiers of support, very much appreciated. Use that towards paying off our equipment and paying our editor. Yeah. So new developments. There is some sweet little primers. I guess it's not really new brew. It was
New stuff.
Reed,
Well,
you
there's
have a
some
new
new
brew.
brews.
Yeah,
Shit
you
is
have a new brew.
We've got
But
3
I
decks,
think the
right?
most standout of this, sorry, Reed, is the
Effort wise, yes, I'd have to agree.
is the new Tasker primer. Morgan, you want to talk about that?
Golden Control by Sinestra. It's a new, it's a Tasker deck. It incorporates elements from existing ones, but I think it's the most refined one we've seen to date. Very clean and low to the ground, and has an excellent primer that goes along with it, and a sweet name. So I'm on.
It's
board.
awesome.
Also,
All
we've
the
got
above.
shout outs in the description of the primer, so that's pretty
We
hype.
do. There's some links to episodes there. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Finesse.
Conflict of interest, yeah.
Hey, dude, we're transparent.
Yeah.
We divulge our interests.
Yeah, stroke our ego, man. That's the easiest way to get shout outs.
Yeah, definitely great way if you want your primer on.
Be sure
If
to do
you want your
developments.
primer
Yeah.
featured, just the more links you can shove in there.
Come on, you scratch our back, we scratch yours. This isn't complicated, folks.
Yeah, if your green deck has an Into the North in it, it's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Just
that's all it is.
right there. Yep. Oh,
Um,
okay. No. Okay. So we have to come up with a QR code that links to the website, and then have people do alters of Into the North to put the QR code on the art, and then upload those to Tapped Out and put those in the Into the North slot.
sounds like a lot of steps, man.
Sounds like a great marketing idea. You'll see. You'll all
Just
see.
go out to GPs and throw these like QR code leaflets all everywhere and just
Yep.
get kicked out. Yeah. Okay. So Reed, you've got a deck on new developments. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I sure do want to talk about it. It is called Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I thought it was cinnamon glazed mid range.
It was cinnamon glazed mid range, and then I realized that I didn't want to have to say that, so I realized that I wanted to say cinnamon toast crunch more, so I'm saying that now.
Okay, so
Dexter names, you can't prove me
before you
otherwise.
start talking about the deck, what is there a purpose behind this name?
Okay, so if you that's a new development. Missed this. Okay, I gotta go over this. If y'all don't know, y'all listening don't know, because I'm sure these guys do, because Morgan's salty about it continuously. Scryfall has released their deck builder, and it is the best thing since sliced bread.
Is it? I haven't checked it out. Is it better than Architect?
It's real nice. They're still working out some issues, and you can't fully port over primers yet, which I don't think is an issue, because I think you can probably just probably host it on like a Google Docs or something, and then link to that in the description instead. But it is so much smoother than like anything else that I've used. They do really cool stuff for creating decks. I know personally, we're not sponsored by Scryfall or whatever, just Scryfall's nuts and they're awesome and all their products are great. But yeah, so like they do this whole thing where when you like make a deck, you want to edit a deck, you can do manual card entry, like type them into the slots, but it'll also auto complete those if you move out of them. So like it'll like recognize like a half a card name or whatever, or like a misspelled card name, and like just put that card in the list instead. And like you can go and like manually edit all the lists and like manually edit the other stuff. And then also, if you're working on a deck, you can use their search engine to search for cards and then just like add the cards from the card page, which is
That's cool.
Pretty sick. That's
that's
super
pretty
sick.
handy.
And then they also do native imports from other deck building sites. So like if you want to import a deck, you can be like, okay, import, and then if you give it like a tapped out list or an architect list or whatever, or like not even a list, sorry, just like a URL, it'll pull the list from that URL and just put it into a list for you.
That's a great way to get people to
Which is
move over
awesome.
to your platform.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you give it like
Yeah.
your profile and just have
but
250
do my-
decks
are
on
my-
tapped out?
Are my
So-
tapped out points transferable? That's
Gonna take my donation from
But
tapped
my
out and move it to
karma.
Scryfall. But yeah, so that's super cool. But where this is coming from, so you guys should all go check that out, by the way. But I was using this deck basically as sort of an excuse to build like a deck from scratch on the website. And they do this thing where they auto-generate names for you now. And it just has so happened that the auto-generated name was Cinnamon Glazed Midrange. So that's what it's called. Except
No
it's called Cinnamon Toast
freaking way.
Crunch. Yep.
really.
Yep.
Why would it auto generate that?
Because it's great. It's awesome. So now it's called Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And it's a Thrasios Timna midrange deck.
Oh,
Seen any of those
joy.
before.
Radical.
It is like so far off the deep end. I don't even like. I think people are probably going to look at me in a different light once they see this list. Basically, the list is just Thrasios Timna with Consult, and that's its only wincon, and everything else is value. And the entire idea of the deck is to play mana rocks and dorks, and then play card advantage engines off of those, and then use those to draw into more mana engines, and then use those mana engines to draw into more cards, and then keep going. And then
This
you
just sounds
eventually
like
just
winning
win.
with
Definitely
extra
fun to
steps.
play.
Yes, and that's what makes it so fun. Basically, okay, the actual serious reason behind this deck is that I felt like there was probably space for like a 4-color Rashmi-ish type deck in like Thrasios Timna, where instead of playing a lot of the disruptive elements, you just play more value.
How many Heroes of Bladeholt are you running?
0, but I'm playing a lot of good shit in here. There's a Biomancer's
how many-
familiar.
How many rest in pieces are you running, and why
One.
is the answer not one?
There is one.
Or sorry, was it Grafdigger's Cage? You were
I'm running both.
Oh, you finally added rest in peace. There was
Okay, good.
There was
I
definitely
don't know
one
what
of
you're
those was
talking
missing.
about. There was always a rest in peace in this deck.
One of those was
Honestly.
missing.
But yeah, it's basically just like the greediest deck ever, because I felt like Consult, like pure Consult Thrasios Timna is probably underexplored right now, because I think that that wincon stands up on its own currently, because it has redundancies in both pieces now. And like Timna's really good with Lab Man and all that stuff because you can do draw triggers and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm gonna build a pure consult list and then build the rest with value because I don't want to have to play stacks because I would rather draw more cards than stop other people from doing things. So
to anyone else, does this feel like a step towards 20XX?
We're getting there. Yeah, dude. Fox only Final Destination. No items.
Just everyone's play is perfect. Everyone's lists are the same.
The exact
Literally.
same. Everybody's list is perfectly built to counter each other's.
Oh yeah, also for the listeners, the reason why I said Hero of Bladeholt is because friend of the show, Turnip, has built a Thrasios Timna value deck before, and featuring cards like...
I keep getting... Okay, the thing is, like, when you say that, you think you're being special, but I've had, like, 10 different people say, like, oh, this looks exactly like this list that I built, like, however many years ago. And it's just like, yes, but it's not.
Yeah, it's... Yeah. The Thrasios Timna value is not a unique new idea. Yeah. Okay, and our last new development, Teamer Extortionist.
Yeah, this is just a quick one. I wanted to give a shout out to this deck built by both Shaper and Wedge. It's a teamer list, revolving around Dockside Extortionist, Cloudstone Curio, and Teamer Sabretooth. It's a very strong deck in kind of a weird way, like because it's not running white or black. A friend of the podcast played it against us, and I was very surprised with how well it performed, and I've been messing around with like white versions and black versions as well. Yeah, just wanted to shout out.
How's it assembling? I guess you've got blue for artifact tutors. But it's kind of
Dockside's also just nuts with Thrasios, though, so...
Yeah?
Yeah, you're kind of just drawing like enough cards per turn that you don't really need like a big tutor suite. I don't even think this list actually runs
Also, like, just having two, like, green can definitely find creatures, and having your Wincon be two creatures that both are reasonably useful is not bad.
Quote unquote.
And it's also got a Freed from the Real, which is, at this point, any Thrasios deck.
A Shaper deck has Freed from the Real in it? All right, time to call him out.
I just have to say,
I'm going right to the Discord right now and calling Shaper out for this, because I remember for the past year and a half, every single time I've brought up Hulk discussion, Shaper has continuously shit on Freed from the Real.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's got an Arbor Elf, it's got a Kiora's Follower, it's got Incubation Druid. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to not.
Continuing the long and proud tradition of Shaper beating everyone to the punch, I was also working on a very similar idea.
Oh my god.
And then someone's like, oh yeah, Shaper just published that list. I was like,
not again.
Of course it did.
The funny thing is that me and
Dockside Extortionist
were also working on a Thrasios Crom list a month or so ago.
Well, there's living proof that Shaper did. Sorry, guys.
I have chat logs.
Anyway.
I swear, guys.
Okay, well, that's enough new developments for this episode. And let's get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, and that is Wincons. So, what makes a Wincon? Broad question. What do you guys have to say about that? What makes a Wincon?
Well, it has to fulfill one of the ways of winning the game.
Quote unquote winning the game.
No, actually.
So I guess.
All right,
Step one.
Fine.
Step one. Make sure your Wincon actually ends the game.
Elaborate.
I'll just lock everyone out. I'll stacks everyone out, and then I'll win. I'll lock everyone out, and then I'll win. I'll grind them out. All of these things are not winning.
I feel like that idea. I feel like the grind out idea just comes from 1v1 and ports extremely poorly
so
as to multiplayer.
romanticized too, because I feel like people have this idea where they're gonna come into CDH and they're like, oh, it's like the most unfair format. I'm gonna play this format. I'm gonna force people to be fair.
The problem is
people
trying
to
to
die by combat.
Yeah,
trying
you
to
can force people to be fair, and then you'll lose the game eventually because you're not closing it out. You're just letting
Also,
them. You're just hindering them a bit, but
you just have to it's very different if you look at something like Vintage, where like the unfair decks, like everything they do is punished by stuff that punishes whatever unfair thing it is they're trying to do. But in CDH, like there's a lot of times where people are just playing like dorks and rocks and lands and then like removal and counter spells. So you play your like, it's not like Trinisphere just means that the person loses the game, like it might in Vintage. And also you have 3 different opponents who are potentially trying to do 3 different unfair things at the same time. And it's not always easy to stop all 3 of them from doing whatever unfair thing it is they want to do at once.
well, also in terms of combat not being a win con, like yes, it should never be your primary win con, but there are definitely decks that incorporate combat damage as backup win cons. So decks that include Tender Shoot Dryad or Elish Norn, definitely try to leverage that as a way to close out the game.
Yeah, Mirror Entity.
Just a little sidebar.
But genuinely, I don't think either of those actually, like, I think that they're good because they deal a lot of damage, not because they actually end the game in a reasonable amount of time. They let you...
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I also think like the inclusion of those types of cards are largely a coincidence of the rest of the deck. Like, Morgan can speak to this better, but his Kestia Hulk deck had an Elish Norn in it because it worked well with his primary win condition.
And also because
Yeah.
Elish Norn is a near unbeatable stacks piece for some decks.
Yeah. But
I think Tender Shoot Dryad is a good one to look at because that's in there mainly just to put a lot of pressure on. But you are trying to close out the game with that kind of combat damage.
But you very rarely actually are,
Yes.
in my experience. And I think that if you look at all the quote-unquote combat damage win cons, if all of their damage was backloaded, like they did nothing until the turn that their cumulative effect would have killed everyone, and then they just killed everyone, they would be not just worse, but substantially worse. Like the fact that something like Tender Shoot Dryad lets you put 15 damage on someone with a Sylvan Library, or even someone with a Crypt, or like an Ad Nauseam deck, or something like that, is what makes it playable. And then the fact that sometimes it actually lets you kill the whole table is gravy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just playing a creature that's like do nothing for 5 turns and then all your opponents die would not be nearly as good as Tender Shoot Dryad.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, that basically getting back to like what an actual win con is, like, yeah, make sure that like it actually is either the game ends as soon as it happens, or nobody gets to play the game like legitimately until the game does end.
Yeah.
So like
I'm Nexus of Fate loops.
Yeah. I'm going to take all the turns. I'm going to remove every single permanent in play and every card in somebody's hand, everybody's hands. Like
Yeah.
that.
And make infinite
that.
swans.
But yeah, like anything, like a lot of stuff that's less than that is very iffy.
Yeah, like I think the biggest culprits I've seen would be like stasis locks. People think it's like, oh yeah, I can keep this stasis around forever. It's like, I mean, sure you can until one of your opponents finds 2 untapped lands and an abrupt decay.
Or a flash.
Or a flash, yeah. But like things like that don't actually represent winning the game. And you should make sure that your win con does.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get on to what makes a win con good, let's kind of talk about some of these win cons. First of all, let's give some specific examples and kind of what are on like the fringes of things. So we were talking about, removing everyone's permanence as a win con. that's something that Gitrog will do. So Gitrog will use, they'll set up their deck more plus discard outlet, which gives them access to their whole deck and ability to loop cards, which means that they're able to cast pretty much any spell in their deck as much as they want. So, classically, people might run something like a Torment of Hailfire if you're coming like straight from casual. That's a common one people use. Oh, I'm going to make infinite mana. Let me cast an infinitely large Torment of Hailfire. I mean, that's a wincon, but that's not something you're going to see in most modern Gitrog decks. And that's actually a trend that's kind of pervasive through the entire, all modern CDH decks, is you're not going to see many dedicated end the game cards.
Outlets, rather.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hard outlets, as it were.
Yeah, like outlets are a necessary part of a wincon, right? Like if Gitrog had infinite mana but no way to effectively spend it, that's not really a wincon. Right? You're like, oh, I'm gonna cast this Lotus Petal, get infinite green, and I don't know, destroy all your artifacts and gain infinite life with Nature's Claim. Like that's hardly an outlet. So you can't really call that a wincon.
Life before in this format.
Right? But yeah, so outlets are an important part of wincons, and outlets have been kind of moving from the hard outlets like the Torment of Hailfire down to stuff like Praetor's Grasp, which has alternate utility but is still a card used to exile everyone's library, down to cards like just using cards that you would be running anyway. So that's like Assassin's Trophy or using Ulamog to destroy everyone's permanents, and Thoughtseize and Duress to rip stuff from people's hands, what you want to do anyway to protect your combo. So those are the kinds of outlets that decks are transitioning to. That's for Gitrog.
Also,
but other decks are moving in that direction as well.
Have to give a shout out.
Yeah, the Tasker has a similar. Sorry.
On a similar vein, I have to give a shout out to Finale of Devastation from War of the Spark, because that card in a lot of decks has it's a very serviceable creature to play tutor. Like arguably, slightly less mana efficient than Green Suns. Doesn't
certainly it depends, but, right? Yeah. I guess it's mana efficient if you're finding a green creature, for sure. Yeah. But in terms of trying to find a specific effect, like if you're in Gitrog, Green Suns for 2 is what you can find for the cheapest discard outlet, whereas Finale for 1 finds Putrid Imp. So mana efficiency can be matched.
It's a very solid tutor to play effect, and then also represents an infinite mana outlet.
Not just an infinite mana outlet in terms of like combat damage with creatures you have on play or something. Like the fact that it gives things haste just enables a lot. It enables a lot, yeah. Especially if you can like recur it at sorcery speed. Like you can just put every creature from your deck into play, like make it infinitely large with haste. Or Gitrog, a lot of what the current quote unquote win-conless loops are doing, thanks to Forge 10 from the Gitrog server for coming up with this wincon, is you cast Finale for 10 and you're looping it with a Deathrite Shaman to exile instants and sorceries from your graveyard and your opponent's graveyards, to basically burn people out. And you just sack the Deathrite Shaman and bring it back into play with a Finale with haste. Yeah. Finale, good card.
Pretty neat. I wanted to give a shout out to Golden Control again with kind of a niche wincon, which is with Tasker. Obviously, if you have infinite mana, you can play spells in your deck an arbitrary amount of time. So what it can do is play Ashiok and mill everyone out, and then Abrupt Decay and repeat the process.
Lots of Tasker. When you're doing win-conless stuff, or saying win-conless is probably an unfortunate term of nomenclature that's been
it is such a terrible term for what it actually is.
Yeah, people who aren't familiar, like, I mean, CDH really does suffer from this generally, which is like just confusing names for things. Like I kind of rolled my eyes a bit when you said your deck was Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I would never contribute to such a terrible trend.
Yeah, who would name their deck definitely not for alls?
Or 4-color Rashmi for a deck that doesn't have Rashmi in it, or Cinnamon Toast Crunch,
Yeah.
or Peanut Butter and Jam.
Yeah, no, it's CDH. CDH definitely has a problem with naming, and we talk about what does it mean to be a layered?
Raspberry Pi.
Okay, raspberry jam makes sense.
Oh,
okay,
that raspberry jam, yeah.
Does it?
It's defensible for sure.
but yeah, so
quaint.
there's a bit. It's unfortunate where we've gone to with naming, because it makes
there's a bit of a
the
barrier.
format a bit
I mean,
puts up a barrier
it's
to
certainly
entry a
not
bit.
something that's unique to see.
No, not at all.
Definitely not.
Have you looked at the history of Legacy decks? It's great, and it's also much worse.
Yeah, and the so Wincon list being an unfortunate name is that's definitely true, because people get confused and think that, oh, well, you're not winning the game. There's no Wincon. Like, how does that make sense? But yeah, it just means that there's no dedicated Wincon slot, and that you're trying to utilize cards that you would already be running to achieve the same end result.
Yeah, this is kind of a deck building tip, which is redundancy matters, or redundancy is important.
Yeah.
If a card like Abrupt Decay acts as removal, but also, can win you the game, then that's great.
Yeah. And yeah, you can get really creative, and that's where a lot of the innovations in decks over the past, I don't know, year and a half or so, 2 years, where a lot of the refinements and tuning of decks has become making the outlets more efficient. And Tassiger is definitely that's some creative Wincon with Ashiok and Abrupt Decay. It's pretty cool. So let's talk about, let's give a few more examples for Wincons.
Just so people sort of
just
know what we're talking about, not just
Some more
niche
traditional
stuff.
ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of stuff like Consult, which is
Oh,
huge
Consult.
one. Oh, Consult.
Consult. Yeah. It's not the scourge of the format. Flash Hulk is the scourge of the format, but Consult is definitely
Consult is the runner-up.
the
It's the
infectious.
Consult's the bar.
It's everyone's got the Consult disease. It's
feel like-
infecting every deck.
I feel like the problem is the stuff that beats Consult is bad to Flash Hulk, so then people don't.
I mean, yes, but also
So we've kind of just done this thing in our meta.
yeah. Well, also
There you
because Consult is very easy to fit into decks, but yeah.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, so our meta has just kind of done this thing where we forget that Flash Hulk exists and just play, post Flash Hulk meta. and
And then every once in a while, it shows up.
yeah.
I just gotta represent. I just gotta give people the small reminders sometimes.
It's funny. I saw some Reddit poster on
Totally
Twitter. Someone was
appreciate
like, "Man, I barely ever see Flash Hulk." I'm like, it doesn't mean it's not the scourge of the format. I know
mean it doesn't
so many
exist.
people. Yeah, so many people are just intentionally not playing Flash Hulk, which might be contributing to people thinking that, the meta's in a healthy place. Flash Hulk isn't super dominant, whereas these people are like in self-enforcing rules to not play Flash Hulk just to keep things interesting. I'm definitely in multiple metas like that, and then you play in a meta where people aren't like that, and they're just infinite Flash Hulk decks. Yeah. So next up on Wincons, we've got Food Chain, classic Wincon. It's
Good old Wincon.
the Wincon isn't Food Chain is interesting because Consult is a pretty clear cut Wincon, right? Like Jace or Labman says win the game on the card.
Well,
and then
I
your
think-
Consult or Tainted Pact are just the enablers that get you there.
I think there's something to be said about we probably should differentiate outlets and Wincons though, right? Like Wincons are sort of like what get you to the point where you win the game, right? Like it's like
There's a very fine line, right? Like,
But I mean, not every WinCon has that clear a dichotomy. Like I don't think I would say that Labman is an outlet for Tainted Pact.
well, no. So Labman
But,
plus
like-
Consult is the Wincon, but Labman's still the outlet there. Ladman is what
But-
lets you win the game. He just happens to also be part of the combo.
Like, I think that I don't think that in my mind that's not an outlet. Like, some combos have outlets and some combos don't, and in my mind, console just doesn't have an outlet.
Well,
Fair.
in terms of outlet terminology, that's typically used it's almost exclusively used with going infinite in mana or resource, some kind of resource, and being able to spend that resource on the outlet. So whether that means you're looping the outlet card to generate, instead of having it be some generic enchantment that just says pay 4 mana, deal 1 damage to an opponent, right? You're gonna loop some spell that says deal 1 damage to an opponent or destroy target permanent, etc. But Food Chain, the Wincon, Food Chain itself does not incorporate the outlet into the combo itself, the quote unquote combo. It's like the combo being making infinite creature mana and Food Chain's ability to exile a creature. So your Wincon in most Food Chain decks, or the most popular archetype of Food Chain, which is First Sliver Food Chain right now. The First Sliver is, I guess, the First Sliver isn't even technically your outlet. It's giving you access to an outlet in the deck.
The First Sliver turns infinite creature mana into infinite cascades, which you turn into wins through cards that are in the deck.
Yeah, I'd like to say that in this case, the First Sliver is considered the outlet.
Yeah, it was just it's pretty clear that it's supposed to be the outlet, but it's not. Just in case anyone wants to, send us a message and be super pedantic about it, be like, well,
I think it's in the same category as Tasker, right? Like you're taking
same
their
category as Tasker for sure.
Yeah.
Well, but I think you could actually argue that in many ways, Labman is an outlet in Food Chain Sliver.
In specifically the context of the Food Chain combo in Food Chain Sliver. Yes.
Like that, then it's actually an outlet, because that's how most of your wins come from, some sort of assembling.
I would probably say
and exiling your deck.
Twister loops are the outlet rather than Sliver still. Sliver's the thing that
Twister
lets
loops.
You draw.
Twister loops account for literally 5%.
Sure, but I'm more talking about the actual the stuff that actually lets you win the game in that deck are Labman, Lab Jace, Twister loops, Goblin Bombardment sometimes, some other stuff. Recursion loops. I think those are all outlets, whereas Sliver's probably just the thing that gets you there. I don't know. It's not why.
So, and if you want to talk more about Food Chain as well, you look at Food Chain Prosh, where the combo Food Chain is a combo with your commander, right, which generates infinite creature mana. And then you
creatures
and infinite creatures,
and infinite death triggers and all that stuff.
Yeah, so you can use that, but your actual way that you're winning the game is by having a high density of outlets that utilize those various properties. The creature ETBs from the infinite Prosh, making tokens, generating creatures. So something like a Perforos, or using the infinite sack triggers by running something. What's the Eldrazi for 2 and 2 black? Smothering Abomination.
That's the one. Yep.
That's it.
Got it.
Okay.
Right.
So having various cards that convert those infinite resources into a win.
Yes.
Those are the actual outlets. Yeah.
Can't even come up with the name on the spot. Come on. What are you doing?
So Food Chain, I think Food Chain's probably one of the more, I don't want to say complex, but it fits into various categories depending on the deck, with Prosh or Food Chain Sliver, and there's some nuance there.
The Food Chain is just a common win con that we're talking about in general here.
Oh yeah,
as just as context for what we're talking about. Same thing for the next one, Scepter, as in Ice-Crown Scepter plus Dramatic Reversal.
ISO Rev. What else do you?
Dramatic Scepter.
Dramatic Scepter.
Dramatic Scepter.
And this is another. You're making infinite mana, and then also occasionally infinite untaps.
And then you're doing
with exactly
something.
Top.
Yeah, and then you're doing something with it.
Something.
Whether
what are you doing, guys?
Killing people.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe you were super proactive and you put a Thrasios in your command zone.
But even then, Thrasios doesn't just straight up kill the people, right? You need to do something with that mana, and a lot of times that involves casting Time Twister and looping spells.
Whole bunch of twisters.
Yeah, Time Twister, one of those cards that is just so hard to replace. But yeah, so again, we've got the sort of pattern emerging where when you're making infinite mana, a lot of times your commander can just be the middleman that allows you to set up and establish loops or get to the cards that allow you to establish these loops. So Thrasios drawing you your deck, First Sliver cascading through your deck. Tasker fills kind of both ends in the sense that it fulfills the recursion role itself and not needing Time Twister, but is kind of like a hybrid between Thrasios just digging through your deck and the recursive element. Scepter's pretty straightforward. You've got Hulk. Oh god, what can't you do with Hulk? Reed, tell
Good
us.
old commander. What can't I do? Well, I can't. You can't have more than 99 or 98 cards in your library with Hulk, and that's about it. I mean, and even then, if you play with wish cards and a wish board and you pull that Eldrazi out of your deck, you can even do that.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so what sort of wincons does Hulk involve? Because there's so many different ways you can take this.
It's usually you're usually either making an infinite resource or abusing Labman. or vastly simplifying it. But yeah. You do like this enabler thing that lets you put together a lot of stuff, which is a 2-mana instant that's not okay. And then you get either like infinite mana, infinite death triggers, something else with that, or you just abuse Labman.
Sorry,
Combo into a
you
combo.
said you're either making an infinite resource or abusing Labman. This question was about Hulk, not CEDH in general.
I see. Right.
Yoke.
Isn't Hulk just CDH though? It's a very good analog for the rest of the format.
And so one thing I kind of want to point out is that the names of these wincons are generally you don't name the outlet typically, right? Like sometimes in deck archetypes, Hulk isn't just the only, like there's sub archetypes that define, right? So there's Shuffle Hulk, Breakfast Hulk, right? So, but most of these decks and wincons take their names after the core enabler.
Rather than the outlet.
Petition to start calling them all breakfast, or calling them all Labman Hulk or Blood Artist Hulk.
Yeah, man. That's how you categorize. But then what do you do with the Red Hulk decks? Oh no.
Like Twister Loop Hulk.
Just the fact that the enablers is what usually defines the playstyle, right? It wouldn't make sense if you were just naming it, for instance, in Shuffle Hulk, just naming it after the actual outlet that allows you to win the game. You just call the deck like what? Thrasios Timna Blood Artist, and that could be so many different things, right? That just sounds like casual aristocrats or something.
I feel like decks are often sort of named after the first step you can take that leads you to deterministically winning the game if not disrupted.
Yeah, that's kind of basically what an enabler is.
That is a unique step. Is the big one there, because if you can't.
What do you mean?
Like it's the first step toward winning the game that is a step that no other deck takes usually.
Well, I mean, like even Hulk decks are all named, or like various Flash Hulk decks are still all referred to as Flash Hulk, and then you specify the pile. But
yeah,
sure. So
like,
when you're referring
there's some sort of like not quite counter examples, but I guess where things could go either way. For instance, so Shimmerzer, right, takes its name from Shimmermer, which arguably could be the first step in deterministically, closing out the game. But if you really want to rewind it, you could kind of call it Zur Necropotent Storm.
Yeah, but
right,
but the problem is every Zur deck is Zur Necropotent Storm. It's not a unique identifier.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, I don't want
first
to
of
get too
all-
much into it, but like, yes and no. They run necropotence, but like, in order to storm off with necropotence, you need some pretty. You need to be doing that in the end step, otherwise you're just going to be sculpting a hand of 7.
Yeah, but Necropotence Storm doesn't imply that you're using the Necropotence to storm. It just implies that you're running Necropotence and Storm.
Sure.
Okay, I think
Sure.
we can
we can agree
on.
that generally
Yes.
decks are named after the first thing that's the step towards the guaranteed win.
Oh yes, the classic Mulligan Hulk.
The classic Land Dork, Land Dimnahawk.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
What's the die roll Hulk? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're oh my god. Sorry guys.
No, we're never staying on topic.
Dude, you missed it, man. It's the classic shuffle Hulk, right? You have to
Yeah,
shuffle your deck
so
before you-
shuffle and cut Hulk.
Wincons where you're not going to get the name directly associated with the first step the first step towards winning or the enabler are going to be decks that are really only have one straightforward play pattern or one established wincon. So these are typically commander focused combos. So Gitrog Monster is not going to be called Gitrog Monster, Dackmore discard outlet Titan loops or something like that. Gitrog
In
Titan
fairness,
loops or
I think
whatever.
the primer
Is
is
named
called
Gitrog Dredge. Yeah.
Gitrog Dredge. But like that's when people don't need to specify or won't usually specify, they will just say Gitrog because Gitrog does basically one thing. If it has a combo it has an infinite combo with the effect that the commander has, so you're always going to have access to that, and there's only one version of that combo. Well, like, I mean, with Gitrog, you could kind of get
There's one
into the
version of the
weeds.
combo.
Yes, but there's one version of the combo. But things like Yisan, where Yisan is not named because Yisan isn't a combo piece. Yisan is the enabler.
I mean, playing Yisan is definitely the first step on the deterministic path to victory.
This is very true.
Yeah, but Yisan is only assembling your combo, right? But whereas something where I guess that's a bit more generic. So Yisan, your commander being a tutor with Yisan, you could look at something like Sidisi, Mono Black Sidisi, where Sidisi is a tutor, but the deck is called Sidisi ad nauseum because I suppose you could set up some sort of Razaketh combo
There's a
or
Buried
some
Alive
Reanimator
version.
combo. Yeah.
But I mean, both of those are still named after like the first, like Buried.
Yes,
It's
the
Sidisi
first
Buried
thing.
Alive Razaketh or Sidisi Ad Nauseam, both of which are like
Yeah, but the
first-
people don't refer to Yisan as Yisan Sabretooth.
So now that
Right.
we've gone
But-
completely off the rails and are talking about deck naming conventions, we can now, and you guys now all have the context, we can now talk about why the deck's called Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Because the first part to a good day of
Can
playing
somebody mute
Magic
him?
is a healthy, balanced breakfast.
Okay, there, Kellogg's. Relax.
All these secret sponsorships.
Yeah.
What's happening?
But yeah, Reed makes a good point. We've gone pretty into the weeds on naming conventions, but I think it's been illustrative, or at least hopefully our listeners find it informative.
Generally,
regarding
the other
naming
Wincons-
convention
yeah.
and the anatomy of what constitutes like wincons in terms of enablers. Like, I guess the term, I don't know if there's like an official accepted terminology on things like Thrasios. People just typically call it an outlet, even though it's kind of like a middleman outlet.
He's sort of like part of
enablers
the
and outlets.
combo.
Yeah, it
basically.
certainly performs. It's certainly redundant
Yeah.
as an outlet, and it's nice to be able to properly name your deck, but at the same time, definitely don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, the best way to name a deck is
Especially when
is top down deck design. By the way, so you come up with the name before you come up with the concept of the deck. So you decide, yes, I'm gonna name my deck Raspberry Jam, and you figure out, you break it down.
Figure it out,
Raz,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Razakat. Bears,
That kinda sounds like Razaketh,
okay, hate
yeah.
bears, nice, and you just the rest, it all makes itself.
Yeah. I see.
Yes.
See,
yes,
what you
yes,
can also
yes.
do is you just build a deck, then you go hand it to Labman Dan and just get him to come up with a name. Which is why we have classics such as Razzacats.
I like the name Razzacats.
I think it needs to be
Razzcats
changed to
definitely
Razzacat
rings
since they
things.
cut Casali Bride Mage, but apart from that, it's good. Hey, my Razzacats list does have 2 cats in it, so take that.
What's the name of your Razzacats list, Morgan?
Mine is called Cat Burglars.
Which is the best
That's
name
some
of all time, by the way.
top down deck design. I'm
It's
telling you guys,
definitely
it's the
not.
best.
I
name.
built the deck
Yeah.
and then played it like 3 times, and then someone went, "You should call that deck Cat Burglars." I was like, "Yeah, you're right. I should."
Oh, see, yeah, you should have came with the name first.
No shout out with that.
Whoops, my mistake.
Yeah, so let's move on to what makes a WinCon good.
Quotes good.
Yeah, there's
There's
sometimes you have to
subjectivity.
make a lot of this is contextually.
How do you measure
good.
the greatness of a
Right,
combo,
like-
I guess? Yeah.
Some WinCons are good in that color pair for your commander, right? So obviously Yisan is able to assemble a infinite with Temur Sabertooth, but is that WinCon quote unquote good? I mean, you don't see it played in other decks. That's because the commander provides a special form of enabling, right? But generic kind of WinCons that don't have obvious synergy with the commander, like Consult, those are where you're typically going to see good win conditions or classically good win conditions. And so we're going to evaluate whether a WinCon is good based off certain metrics. So do you guys want to kick things off with the metrics?
Well, not we're going to evaluate even. I think just like
You should evaluate.
They are evaluated
just
on
generally
the basis
you
of these
can
metrics, yeah.
evaluate a WinCon based on a few things. I guess I'll start. Big one. One of the largest things to consider is mana efficiency of a combo. How much does it cost to win the game with this combo? What do you got to
And I
pay
think
into it?
there's sort of one other thing that's kind of attached to that is how much like setup you need, which often people don't count as mana efficiency. And like there are times where it's appropriate, and there are times where it's not appropriate to count it.
Yes.
So you just have to make sure that like you're factoring that in. Like as an example, something like a Razaketh win condition. Like, are you saying, well, it technically costs, green to have 2 creatures in play, or are you sort of saying, well, I'm just accepting that it doesn't work unless I have creatures in play or whatever. Like it varies from deck to deck and from situation to situation, but definitely factor those in.
The mana efficiency of Isochron Scepter Dramatic Reversal can look rather poor sometimes, right? If you had to consider like, oh, I need to develop 3 signets and then develop Isochron Scepter plus Dramatic Reversal. Obviously, 3 signets is a bit of a worst case scenario, but the idea being you don't always have to say include some of the setup or I guess necessary requirements as include them in part of the mana efficiency or card efficiency categories, which by the way, yes, let's just list the other metrics. So mana efficiency, card efficiency, low deck building requirements, and I'll also throw on interactability or resilience to interactability. So just resilience.
Just resilient. There you go.
Yeah.
Got there.
Streamline.
But yeah, so you're not typically going to count the 3 signets in terms of that's going to cost me an additional 3 net 3 mana, so bringing the total cost up to 7 and an additional 3 cards. Because if your deck if that's just kind of on game plan, like you don't count the land drops, for instance, as part of the card requirements for a combo, because all combos are generally going to require having the requisite amount of lands to cast your spells. So those are kind of just chopped off of all the combos, because you all that matters is kind of the very end, the actual cards that matter and that are more unique. So yeah, Isochron Scepter Dramatic Reversal really is just a 2-card 4 mana combo. because
And
you
then-
can kind of assume you have the dorks or rocks.
But with those assumptions comes you have to roll that into the deck building restrictions that the card imposes on you, and that
Yeah.
you're playing non-land mana sources. So as long as it's basically this is a 4 mana 2 card win condition as long as you're meeting these deck building restrictions, right?
Yeah, which is why Razaketh is generally a very efficient win con, because all you need is, Entomb plus Reanimate and some dorks in play, which are something that is kind of already on game plan. Yeah.
Yeah, one dork and 1 mana, or 2 dork, or 1 creature, 1 mana, or 2 creatures.
Yep.
Both of which are very easy to satisfy.
And so the other, I guess, staple win cons that aren't commander dependent, or aren't dependent on the commander as an enabler or as or as a combo piece. Consult. You want to evaluate the mana efficiency, card efficiency. We'll kind of get card efficiency out of the way. Pretty much every combo in CDH is going to be a 2-card combo, or it's going to be a 3-card combo where one of the pieces is in the command zone. Example, Gitrog. Discard Outlet Dakmor plus Gitrog, which you're always going to have access to. In terms of card efficiency, the most efficient combo in CDH is everyone's favorite mono red deck,
Sidisi.
Godo Bandit Warlord.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another one that's equally good and has more redundancy and resiliency, which is Nagila and any one of her outlets.
But Nagila isn't a 0 card. It has more redundancy, but it's not a more card efficient combo.
Oh, you're saying because it finds
Yes.
Yeah. It was just a meme answer.
Yeah, Nagila is kind of one of those like 1.5 card combos, because Nagila is just so easy to play, like so mana efficient and card efficient, because it's literally
I guess it's a 1-card combo with lots of different cards, and that's what makes it a just redundant
something of a combo with itself and lands.
yeah,
Combos
exactly.
of land drops, always something you want to hear. Dude, Team Ramnath, baby.
But yeah, so consult
actually, yes.
consult is very very card efficient, or at least it meets the standard of card efficiency. So 2 cards, but not every 2-card combo is run in CDH. Classic 2-card combo that's going to see play in more mid to high power decks is Deadeye Navigator plus Palinchron, or Palinchron plus Phantasmal Image. The problem with those combos is that they have higher, I guess they're not really deck building requirements, but
Initial.
So with Palinchron combos, like you need to have if you're comboing with Phantasmal Image, you need to have at least 7 lands in play.
And also, you need
7 mana
enough
worth of
non-painful blue sources, which
Yes.
a lot of people often neglect.
And you also need
Yeah.
incredible amounts
And
of
if
mana
you're
to initially start it off in the first place.
Yeah, so these are one of the things where we were talking about, requiring land drops. We're not really going to count that, but it really, you can kind of brush those away when your combo requires very few lands, I suppose. Like when it's kind of par for the course for the rest of the format in terms of how many lands it requires. So Razaketh, a lot of the cheap mana lines involve sacrificing a creature and then finding life death to cast life and make your lands into tutors to kind of accelerate or get net more tutors out of that. But obviously if you're assembling this off of purely like a early game Chrome Mox into dorks or something along those lines, you're not going to be able to meet those requirements. But that said, the requirements for lands and Razaketh's combo are so few that people typically don't count it. Whereas something like a Palinchron Phantasmal Image does have quite a few land requirements, so that is something to consider as in terms of stuff that is required on your board before you can combo.
Yeah, it's not quite anti-synergy, but it's not particularly synergistic with non-land mana sources as your primary mana source.
But then so Deadeye Navigator plus Palinchron is something that doesn't require a lot of lands, but is very weak in terms of mana efficiency. And and very, very high CMC cards. It's a 2-card combo, so it meets our the standard for card efficiency, but falls short on mana efficiency.
And because it's so mana inefficient, it kind of imposes increased deck building requirements. Like I wouldn't like it's hard to think about it as a 2-card combo when it really is like an Entomb or Buried Alive plus reanimation. So then
So Consult really gets away with this because it fits the card efficiency, mana efficiency. It does have some deck building requirements. But
yes, but
this is a big but.
Lower.
Tainted Pact is, I mean, it's there is an argument for how is it very low to have to completely alter your mana base and make yourself weak to Blood Moons and back to basics.
I mean, speak for yourself, playing a 2-color deck, but for a lot of 4-color and 5-color decks, it's not large alterations is the thing.
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of like something like Zur, right? Where in a Shimmer Zur, if you're going to go into Tainted, you're going to have to cut your High Tide mana base, right? You're going to go down from probably like 8 islands to 2 islands. And so High Tide really isn't an option anymore. So there are deck building requirements, but it has payoff outside of the combo. Right, so Tainted Pact isn't just a combo card, whereas something like Deadeye and Palinchron are really only going to be useful for your combo. But Tainted Pact is just a generically very strong card. So the deck building requirements kind of balance out on that front. So those are things you need to consider. And then the final final metric was resiliency, which of course the Consult combos are famously very resilient to stacks pieces and hate.
Well,
so
famously not
and cards like Consultation also
or Replicate for that matter.
Right.
Well,
Jace.
Yeah.
Historically.
With Jace, that's why it became historically. Yeah. Correct, Reed. Gold star for you.
Yeah.
So another point for Tainted Pact when it comes to card efficiency in Food Chain combo is you can go look for your Food Chain with this card, and in the meantime also exile one of your
you can,
pieces, which is very castable. Yeah.
And one thing to consider as well is card quality in terms of Wincons. So if you can play like we were talking about with outlets, and having the outlets be cards that you would already want to run. So typically decks aren't going to just jam a Lab Jace for value, but I've definitely run Tainted Pact as a card just for value. So the card quality, if it's sufficient, is something that you can kind of take points in favor for running that card, and it's less of a, even though if there's a deck building requirement for it, you're getting a nice payoff because the card is just standalone good.
Yeah,
like that's also true of like more stormy decks and Icecrown Scepter Dramatic Reversal, where I mean, yes, there's the meme case where you put like Counterspell under Dramatic Reversal, under Icecrown Scepter, but like Dramatic Reversal is a very real ritual.
Hot take, I feel like that's a that's an underplayed. I think people probably sandbag Scepters
are we getting
too late.
into this? Please don't.
No, we're not. I'm just going to say I've definitely seen it where just a value Isochron Scepter has been, if you're not going to sandbag it for the combo and you've got combo redundancy, just jamming that out is a solid play to make.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like a Narset's Reversal or a
if you have combo
that's ridiculous.
That is a key piece.
Yeah, Narset's Reversal certainly is special on its own, but Mana Drain
or Infinite Dovin's Vetoes
sometimes.
Oh god, Dovin's Veto.
Dovin's Veto. Oh,
so the idea being that as Flynn was saying, Dramatic Reversal is an incredibly unique card as well. And so, it's really the only card of its kind, and it's a very, very efficient ritual in a lot of decks just on its own, even without the combo.
And
even if you untap like Mana Vault plus Fel Warstone, that's actually insane.
Yeah,
just on its own.
Yeah, definitely.
I was also gonna make the case with Consult that So Labman, not very useful on its own. I guess it's a Timna blocker, but ignore that.
Trades with Timna.
Like Jace is kind of
Please
worst
don't.
case scenario a really bad value, like a really bad Phyrexian Arena.
It is a
But that's not nothing.
killable Phyrexian Arena.
Also, it costs 1 triple.
Yes, that too.
But it's also, it's true, and you wouldn't run the card purely off card quality like you might with a Tainted Pact. But Lab Jace is something that is like, if the game gets to that point, it is fine to just jam out as a value engine. So it's not a blank card.
It's a blank card. It's definitely a blank card.
I would much rather not expose one of my Wincons as being beat to death rather than just keeping it in hand and
Like, I'm not saying
It's certainly a gameplay decision, but like it isn't blank. Like you can, there are times when you want to.
I think in this particular case, it's mana efficiency far, in terms of a bad aspect of the card. Its mana efficiency certainly outweighs its card efficiency. Like it's yes, technically it's efficient as a value engine, but the triple blue is hard to
hard to
Ignore.
justify.
Like, I don't think if it was somehow worded so that its plus did nothing unless you were winning the game, like it just didn't mill and draw cards, but it did when you were trying to win the game, I don't think that would affect playing the card. Like I don't think there's a single deck that would drop it off the back of that. So
no one
means
drops
when
it,
we're
but I'm saying
evaluating
is
the
that
card,
it does make,
the
like,
fact
it's
that it
very
has that-
clearly better the fact that it has a plus that you can use to if the game somehow gets stalled out. Like games get stalled out.
Sure.
It's not irrelevant text, but you're right. It's not
It's not
so worth
relevant
it that-
text,
yeah.
though, if literally no one has made a decision based on that fact.
like, I mean, we can just agree to disagree
I
because
guess.
yeah, I just, like, there are times when you're going to want to play that
would
card
be productive.
for the value. Yeah.
Okay.
If I had to throw some tags on that card, I think I would go with Linden. But if I practice, I think I'd go
I
with
think I'm siding with
Morgans.
Matt here. There's an in between. There's a middle ground here. I think that actually sort of rolls into another subtopic that we had lined up here, which is properly counting a Wincon package. I think we're going to handle this a bit. We were going to handle this a bit later, but I think this segue is a bit too good to pass up. Just talking about like how to properly count cards that are involved in your Wincon, or cards that you need to win, dead cards in your win package. all
Yeah.
that
So
good
this
stuff.
is going to kind of, I guess it's not a direct offshoot of, but like low deck building requirements. So Hulk, famously has some pretty high deck building requirements and has lots of pieces in the combo. Its mana efficiency and card efficiency, people will count it as a 2-card combo, but a lot of the actual combo pieces, right, if you're trying to count the cards for your combo, are going to be baked into the deck itself. So Reed, you can definitely talk about this.
Well, yeah, it's like
Resident Hulk expert.
I think it would like it's one of those like counting dead cards. I like to separate. Sorry, gonna pick apart a statement there. That you said is that like it's as in like it's a quote unquote 2-card combo. Where like I think the way that I like to think about cards involved in a combo like Hulk is more like it is a 2-card combo and it is 2 mana. It just has costs associated with it. Like it's a 2-card 2 mana combo that also makes your deck lower
the costs
card
come
quality.
in the deck building requirements. Yeah, I definitely agree. That's what I was trying to say.
Rather, yeah, but like just because I see a lot of people trying to quantify Hulk is like, well, it's not actually a 2-card combo because you have to run all these like 10 cards in your deck or whatever. They don't actually do anything. It's like, yes, but it doesn't stop the fact that it's a 2-card combo. It just imposes additional restrictions on it.
It's a 2-card combo in game, not in deck building.
Yes, exactly. That's actually okay. Spleen, every single episode, Spleen hits me with something that we're going to use at some point later on. Gonna add that to my repertoire. Yes, it's a 2-card combo in game. It's like a 12-card combo in deck building.
Yeah, and Hulk, of course, deck building restrictions that high in terms of like, requiring 10, 12 cards to be functional would typically kind of get the axe because card quality or generic card quality is so high in CDH. You don't want to be drawing duds, but off the back of mana efficiency, card efficiency, and resiliency, those are basically just maxed out. So
you have like the 4 bars, like the 4 fighter bars, right? You have a bunch of like Mario Karts. And it's like the speed, power, and like resiliency.
Those are like typically like the pentagon shape with like
it's just like all lopsided on one side, and one of them is just 0.
You're picking your cart in Mario Kart. Yeah. It's gotta have low control, all speed.
Yeah, like you're just scrolling through the different Wincons.
One other thing that I think is important, like Hulk has sort of a very obvious, well, depending on the Hulk build, has a very obvious set of cards that are part of the deck building requirements in your Wincon package. Like, clearly your Blood Artist, your Scephled Illusionist, and Nomad's Encore, like stuff like that. It's like, clearly that's part of your Wincon package. But even if we look at something like Shuffle Hulk, there's some less obvious ones, like is Pattern of Rebirth or is Academy Rector or Body Snatcher part of your Wincon package?
Yeah.
I guess Academy Rector is probably a better one because Academy Rector plus Sack Outlet represents a win.
Yes.
Like that can, there are reasons to count it and there are also reasons to not count it. And another card that I think has a lot of cards like that, that people often don't count, is Ad Nauseam. Where when you build an Ad Nauseam deck, you start throwing in, maybe mana rocks that you wouldn't run otherwise. Like, does this deck really need a mana vault? Well, we're going to put it in, things like Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual, like cards like that, where if you were not playing Ad Nauseam, like having cut Ad Nauseam from a couple decks in the past, I've looked at this and been like, man, I can cut like 4 cards that were actually just in there to enable Ad Nauseam, but like you don't think of that when you play an Ad Nauseam deck.
Ad Nauseam probably is one of the most hard to categorize win cons on this front, right? Because when does it cross the line from being a value card into a win con? Like you can kind of obviously cards like Angel's Grace make it into a very clear-cut combo of drawing your deck, but even still in that case, if you're tapping out, you still do need a certain threshold of 0 mana rocks and rocks that you can kind of chain into each other to turn that into a win con. From that, I guess drawing your entire deck with Adnaz Angel's Grace is an enabler, but you still need to use certain cards to get to the outlet. So there's that. But then if you're just ignoring an Angel's Grace combo, right? Like in Storm, Ad Nauseam is a win con, right? You can oftentimes tap out, okay, well, I'm going to be... It depends on how thin your deck is built and how much you're trying to maximize this.
I mean...
But you can... I have seen it happen, and I've done it myself, where you can tap out for an Adnaz, either playing like Storm or Gitrog or something, and then, as Morgan was saying, use these pieces that you don't necessarily consider part of the quote-unquote combo, your mana vaults, your mana crypts and whatnot, Lotus Petals, to just generate a win from drawing so many cards. But again, where do you draw the line between drawing a bunch of cards and a combo?
And honestly,
I do want to point out, though, when it comes to Adnaz, with the recent development of Dockside Extortionist, it does feel very much like a 2-card combo.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can see that.
Honestly, though, like that question of where in this range like tell me where in this range Adnaz switches from being a value card to a combo card. I feel like we could do an entire episode on that. Right? Like,
I think the best way to encapsulate that is to say that it's the number one efficient card. It's like there's no card more
Adnaz
efficient
does a
than
lot of
Ad
things
Nauseam.
really well. Yeah.
Because it does
Yeah.
everything really well.
And then I guess we can round off this category of what makes a wincon good with talking about the commander specific combos we were talking about before. And so evaluating the, again, mana efficiency, card efficiency, deck building requirements, and resiliency. So actually resiliency is something we briefly touched on with console, but it's definitely can't be understated as an important aspect for combo wincon evaluation.
Although I'm not sure, just before we get into this, I'm going to preface, I'm not sure that resiliency really will overrule the primary. Like really like the big two that you look at are like mana efficiency and card efficiency. And then like I think below that is like the deck building requirements in general. And then I think you start looking at resiliency. I'm not sure.
Well,
that,
we can look at something like World Gorger Dragon. This is a very mana efficient, very card efficient combo. I suppose one of the problems with World Gorger Dragon combo is that you can draw the game. But if you're doing that, you're not losing the game. So that's, I don't know, it's kind of hard to evaluate.
Please don't draw the game.
Please
Stop encouraging them.
Yeah, but this is one that does suffer from resiliency problems.
Yeah. Where
Like unlike something like a Razaketh, where you kind of
Nature's
achieve the
Claim
same end
reads,
result.
Exile all permanents target player controls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not a bad one.
Yeah, so Razaketh will achieve the same end result a lot of the time, where you're going to set up infinite mana, but it does have the ability to, someone goes after you resolve your reanimation, someone tries to Swords to Plowshares your Razaketh, you can just sack a dork and find a Pact of Negation. Or, whatever, or mental misstep.
Thing. Yes.
Yeah, there's all kinds of...
Yeah. I can't believe you didn't say Gitrog, man, because all you have to do is discard a
You can't
land.
do anything, right? In response,
Yeah.
discard a land.
Land the best thing I saw on Reddit was like lands or counter spells.
Yeah, that's funny.
Quote, lands or counter spells in Gitrog. Dude, they're basically the same thing, right? Extirpate, discard a land. Easy. Get around it. Sun spoiling doesn't matter. Just discard a land.
Bit late.
But
I
like
mean, if you can sack a land. If you're playing Scourge Familiar, yeah, they're counter spells against Extirpate, but split second.
But yeah.
certainly I don't think I
Oh my god, but wait, you can get around split second if you have like a Remora in play and then you can
trigger
replace the
abilities.
Remora draw, right?
Yeah, you can, or you can just use mana abilities in the form of like Lake of the Dead.
You can unmorph the counter spell, dude, and then counter the split second card because it doesn't use the stat.
Oh, boom.
Wow.
God, let's
Take that.
yeah,
like,
let's
I
get
just
back
want to
on track.
Like Reed, you said, resiliency to hate doesn't like overrule the other two, and that's certainly true. Like I don't think a 4-card 8 mana combo that is resilient to all common forms of hate would see a lot of play. But like it certainly lets you get away with combos that are less efficient or like slightly less efficient than maybe some of the competition. Like one of the decks that I've been playing around with a lot is Hullen Teller of Tales, and like that deck can completely
Shoot
ignore
lane
Null Rod
for
and Rest-
anyone who wants to, who goes by
that
that
deck can
pronunciation.
completely ignore like cage effects and Null Rod effects or like Rest in Peace, and you can actually win through Curse Totem, although it certainly attacks your mana. And like yes, my commander plus say Allurin and Shrieking Drake is less efficient than some other combos, but like the fact that my deck gets to run that hate and also play through it is certainly also a relevant factor.
I definitely didn't mean to say that like resiliency isn't a factor. I just think that like when you're doing trade-offs between these qualities of a combo, I think there's a lower exchange rate between resiliency.
Dude, it's got a lower weight.
Yeah,
Yeah, resiliency certainly has a lower weight.
and I do think it's good. It's probably something to note that I think that while it does have a lower like rate of exchange between like I'm gonna trade off some of like the resiliency of this combo for a bit more efficiency in like cards or a bit more mana efficiency or whatever. I think there's a baseline for a lot of combos in CDH where like you have to be at least this resilient to a degree. It's just like you have to at least not lose to Rip, Cage, Null Rod, and Curse Totem. Like you have to at least be able to win through something.
I used to kind of think that, but I'm thinking that less and less.
Yeah.
Honestly, like some of the combos I see, like people do Bomberman things and it just kind of works, or like some of the World Gorger decks that, like, yes, they don't technically lose to Null, like you can still win through Null Rod, but you can't realistically get to your winning state through Null Rod, and like you still lose to Curse Totem and Cage. Like, certainly, it's surprising how non-hate proof a lot of wincons that see very common play actually are.
That is fair.
Why are people still playing Bomberman?
Why are people still playing Godo? Come on.
Hey, man. Hey.
Oh, jeez.
Dude, if you're going to talk
Watch
smack
yourself.
about good old Bomberman 3-card combo.
You know what? Godo doesn't make you discard
Dude,
your
but
hand.
LED is just a Black Lotus.
Yeah,
Come
but
on.
Bomberman doesn't die to Torpor Orb, so
Exactly.
What? Who's running Torpor Orb?
Oh,
I'll run it just to show you.
I'll
That'll learn
show
you.
Oh,
whoever's suffering through a Godo meta.
yeah. So any other? Oh yeah. So commander specific stuff. Oftentimes, if it's you can't discount the cost of your commander in terms of mana efficiency, but a lot of times if you're trying to do that as part of your game plan anyway, like in Gitrog, you're just going to cast Gitrog because you want it for value. You don't typically count that in terms of the mana efficiency of the combo, even though technically you would have to, because Gitrog plus Putrid Imp plus Dakmor, that's going to be 6 mana, and that doesn't really cut it for a 3-card combo in Commander, right? You do need to consider the fact that you have access to it in the command zone, and that's part of your game plan.
Yeah.
But you definitely can't ignore it as well. Like,
Yep, you definitely can't
You
ignore
do
it.
have to pay at least 5 and get your Gitrog monster into play.
Yep.
Yeah. Another kind of like resilient combo I do want to mention quickly is Teamer Sabretooth plus Dockside, which I don't know how many times I've mentioned that now on this episode, but it also, you can play things like Collector Oof or to abstract, creatures that go against your combo, because Teamer Sabretooth lets you return it to your hand.
Sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that to be extremely powerful in a game we played where a player essentially created like 60 mana with an oof in play by just recasting their Dockside and then returning the oof to their hand and having like, a crazy
I
amount
guess
of
it's
mana.
kind of a similar principle to like what Raspberry Jam, the end offensive deck that I built, runs on, where like a lot of your hate that would normally impact you, like a Rule of Law or Collector Oof, interferes with your combo, but because they're in the form of creatures and you can kind of just sack them to Razaketh, you don't have to worry about that.
I believe that was also a principle in God, I hope I'm right. I think it was Two's deck. It was one of the Sans Blue Hulk decks, which was like an Aristocrats Hulk deck, where the deck could afford to place like a Containment Priest in it because you're playing like 5 sack outlets and your main line to the win in the first place was just have a sack outlet out and do sack outlet things. So the idea was like you'd use Containment Priest to screw over other decks and then just sacrifice it on the turn that you were going off.
Oh, nice.
So when are you going to add Yixla Jailer to Shuffle?
Exactly. Dude, just wait for the day. I'm going to put a Leyline of the Void in there and just get people. Trust me.
Okay, does anyone have anything else to say on this topic?
Yeah, just one other thing sort of in the vein of commander-specific strategies. One other thing that often gets overlooked when talking about resilience is how easily you come back from, say, like a piece being milled or countered, or like how hard is it for you to try again. So like the most extreme version of you can always try again is the Muldrotha of Phantasmal Image combo, where it literally doesn't matter if the pieces are in your hand or graveyard. But like certain combos, you know, like Isochron Scepter is a big one where if your Isochron Scepter gets destroyed or bounced, then you've already imprinted Dramatic Reversal and then you don't have access to it. So these are other things to consider, maybe not in the context of evaluating a single win con, but, you know, many decks have more than one win con, and considering how resilient your win con is to disruption like that, how difficult it is to try again if something goes wrong, is something you should consider when deciding what alternate win cons you're running as well.
And I have an opposite example that I think, just to solidify the point more, a bit outdated, but with like Teferi, if your Chain Veil's in hand and you can't combo, and an opponent, you know, casts a wheel, and you're like, I can't counter this wheel, and you certainly can't counter every single wheel that gets played in the whole game. You're kind of pants down, like, how the hell do I get this Chain Veil back into my hand or back into my deck? And the answer is literally just Time Twister or you know, Academy Ruins. And if your opponents see that, it's game over.
Yeah, that's you see stuff like this with Food Chain as well, and whereas decks like Shuffle Hulk fall much closer to Muldrotha, same with Gitrog, much closer to Muldrotha, where you've got you can utilize the pieces in your grave through clever piling, or, you know, if you've got a survival, tutoring up your Titan and then discarding it to shuffle in the pieces back and Shuffle Hulk or Gitrog. You've got your yeah, in Gitrog you've got Dakmor carved with Dredge, so basically just one draw trigger away from being back in your hand. Yeah,
stuff to
cool.
consider.
So I think that wraps it up for our core topic there. So before we put this whole WinCon topic to bed, let's talk about what to consider when choosing your win conditions. So a lot of what we've already covered this is kind of just, you know, putting a bow on it, because properly evaluating a WinCon and what makes a WinCon playable are what you're gonna. It's kind of the core of what to consider when picking a WinCon. But, you know, we can sort of get into a bit more specifics. So do you guys want to cover this?
Sure. So I think... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think the first point I always think about is, does my win condition lose to like regularly occurring hate? And this can come in the form of like Rhystic Study, you know, Null Rod, Curse Totem, even just like things that you wouldn't even think of, like Runic Armasaur. Does Verity Circle somehow stop my combo? You know, is losing a creature to a Gilded Drake just a game-ending, you know, condition for me? Definitely got to think about those kind of just random things. This is, you know, it possibly is a meta dependent, but generally speaking, like, being prepared for all these scenarios is a good
well, it certainly is meta dependent. I just want to kind of jump off of what Morgan was saying earlier. He was joking about running Torpor Orb to counter Godo, and that's something that Godo doesn't really have to factor into the equation when losing to hate, because Torpor Orb is not regularly occurring in terms of hate. But things like Null Rod, Curse Totem, Graft Digger's Cage, Rest in Peace, Aven Mind Sensor, these are going to be cards that are going to be differing levels of popularity depending on your meta and the types of decks that people see, right? So if there's lots of Hulk, probably not a good time to play Yisan because Graph Digger's Cage is going to be very pervasive. If your your meta is very dork heavy, probably not a good time to play Yisan because Curse Totem is going to fuck you up. But if your meta is very artifact heavy and there's lots of null rods running around, you can definitely pick your win condition to be resilient to those kinds of effects.
And like, even aside from like picking decks like that, also just like when you're building a deck, picking win conditions. So like looking at, say you want to build some, I don't know, Trust Him to Value deck, with good cards in it, and you're like, what Wincons do I want to put in this deck?
Yeah, do I want to go with Isochron Scepter Dramatic Reversal and make myself vulnerable to null rod effects, or do I want to build something a little more resilient?
Well, I think it actually starts with like, I want to name a deck after a type of cereal, so I'm going to build a Thrasios Timna Value deck.
Well,
and then
see, we've unwrapped another layer to the name now, and this one was actually pre-planned. Is that
you've gotten to the point in the episode where Reed can reveal his master plan?
You guys keep setting me up so well to keep unwrapping layers to this name, because the name is fantastic, by the way.
Dude, the cinnamon bun unravels further.
Yeah, I think when you have to tell everyone that the name is fantastic, that's a great indicator.
Oh, it is. Oh, dude, explaining the joke just makes it way more funny.
I don't know if you noticed, but this is actually funny.
If you'll notice, the abbreviation, the initials to that is CSC.
No, it's not.
It's CTC. There we go. Gotcha. I was testing that you were paying attention. CTC.
Yeah.
But that was the first two initials of that stand for Consultation Thrasios.
So you just gotta do the classic backronym. So you've got an acronym. You just need to fill in the letters.
Well, so today it's on post-hoc rationalizations.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm playing this new deck. It's called ARG, and it's.
Yeah. So anything else for when you're picking your win conditions?
Yeah, I think. I mean, so not losing to regular occurring hate, but also what hate you're able to play in your deck is something that's very nice to consider when picking your win con. Like that's what makes some combos more or less attractive in certain metas. But also some other things is when you're picking your win condition, you need to consider sort of what your deck's overall game plan is. And one of the big things is when you're trying to win, like certain combos don't lend themselves particularly well to drawn out game plans. Certain ones do. Certain ones want to be more in the middle. And, certain like things like your card quality, what commanders you have to run to enable your win con, like things like that will also be influencing. One of the biggest examples is food chain. Most food chain commanders don't grind well at all. So food chain is a reasonably low mana intensive combo because you can exile dorks. And so it lends itself well to a deck that tries to win early, whereas something else might not lend itself as well. And you need to think about that when you're building your deck. Like going back to Godo, the example we've been talking about for some reason. A lot of people built it to be like a very fast deck. Like it was just jam as much mana as possible, get to 11 as soon as possible.
Yeah. Run Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual. But
desperate ritual.
But like maybe that doesn't make the most sense. Like maybe considering how much, like when you build your deck that way, how much it sucks when you like Godo gets countered is like the first thing that pops into my mind when I think of that. Like you cast a million rituals, Godo gets countered. You're like, well, I just burned all my rituals and you don't have a ton of defense against that, like maybe that's a deck where it makes sense to include some stuff that slows it down, a few less rituals, try and win a little bit later, which is something that's, I think the deck has been shifting towards, leaning into things like Blood Moon, Stranglehold, possibilities, Trinity Sphere, possibilities,
Tabernacle, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to match your wincon with the deck that it's going in.
All right. I think that puts a nice little bow on this topic, and we can get into everyone's favorite subject, topic, category thing. Gut check. Segment. That's the word I was looking for. Holy
I hope you didn't turn your
moly.
volume up there.
That was a massive brain fart. I couldn't think of the word segment.
R.I.P. headphone users? Is that
That's the one.
Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe not your favorite segment.
Not anymore. Well, if they can even still hear it. So let's. I don't need to contextualize this gut check too much. So let's just have at her. What do you think is the best entry deck into the format? So if you were to recommend a deck for a new player who is new to CDH, what deck would you recommend?
And no budget, I'm assuming?
No budget.
Hmm.
Boop, 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 boop. Okay.
I kind of have two different answers, but
Reed?
I think so. I think my answer's been a bit too tainted by what I've my copy paste script for when people come in asking for decks, but I think I'll give it anyway.
Okay. Also, I'm just gonna throw in with this gut check. You give the deck and just don't go into a full tirade. I know because gut check we're not supposed to explain things too much, but just give a one sentence why, or if you can one sentence or just a really short reason why you think this is the deck. Okay, Matt.
Sure. I'm choosing Scepter Thrasios. That's a bit of a category, but my reasoning is you get access to a lot of the most powerful cards in the format, while also having a very simple Wincon package.
Morgan?
It's kind of it's kind of like a dip your toes into everything
my
situation.
Answer's go to. Just kidding. My answer. my answer is. My answer is Najila, because you have a very simple wincon in that deck, and so it not having to focus on that means it helps train you to pay attention to what it is your opponents are doing, which I think is one of the skills that new players most need to develop.
Reed?
I think similar-ish lines. My answer has pretty much always been historically Grixis Twin, but now has sort of been updated to Grixis Consult, and specifically Cast Consult, for most of the same reasons. Not necessarily for the same reasoning, but the WinCon is very simple. You don't really have to think about it. You just know that you have this A plus B, and it's very intuitive, and that opens up a lot of other area in the deck to do okay, I'm going to learn how counter spells work. I'm going to learn how removal works. I'm going to learn how all this stuff works.
My answer is the deck with because I definitely agree with Morgan and Reed. The simplicity, and I guess Matt also said this as well, A plus B. The simplicity of the combo is paramount. So my deck is the simplest of simple combos.
Is it a helmet?
And that deck? It is a helmet deck because my pick is go to Bandit Warlord, the Helm the Host combo. And yeah, just to kind of piggyback off what Morgan was saying.
Don't lump yourself.
Morgan wants nothing to
honestly,
do with
I think Morgan's answer is if I wasn't picking Godo, I'd pick Najeela. I think Najeela's also like a really good choice. The one thing I would say is that I think if the deck is too high in interactivity, which Godo certainly isn't, there's not a lot of decision points for new players. So they basically get to focus on their combo and then they can pay attention to what everyone else is doing, learning what their decks do and learning how other people decide what points are the best interaction points. So learning how to use your interaction.
Certainly what I'll say about Najeela...
You don't have to devote a lot of brain power to it.
Certainly what I'll say about my Najeela answer is I think it's a good one if your goal is to train people up as fast as possible. It might not be as good an answer if your goal is to maximize quality of life for the player's opponents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are two
Giving someone
different
Najeela
approaches.
is like, yeah.
Or like
throwing them someone into
or
the
if you have
deep
like
end.
a new player, like, okay, they have to play a tournament immediately with this deck. Which one do you give them? I think Godo's probably the better answer there.
Yeah.
Cast Godo,
Yep.
smile and wait for your
Yeah.
opponents
Can
to
you
concede.
count to 11? that's the Godo test. All right. So before we wrap the show up, we've got a couple of listener questions. So our first listener question comes from, oh God,
Screwed up. Screwed up.
Nope.
Nope.
Ziaquaddle?
Nope.
No. What is it?
Morgan?
You give
Morgan
it a shot,
went
Reed.
Huh?
Zoo Coddle?
Chakotl?
Chakotl?
It is.
Okay, it's Xiuhcoatl. There we go. Foolproof.
Definitely cool.
Reed, you seem to
that's
know.
for sure.
Yeah. So no. It was because I knew that Lyndon was not going to get the X correct there. X is a CH. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, Xiuhcoatl is one of our patrons.
not an
one of our
acronym.
patrons. So, of course, if you're a patron, you get priority for listener questions. So they ask, could you do an in-depth episode on 4-color Rashmi? I have started playing the deck and really enjoy the playstyle. However, I don't have the best grasp on what I should be tutoring for. Some things, i.e. Sig, Runic, and I also have a little bit of a tough time letting go of Notion Thief in my list. So, not really a question we can answer in listener questions. This is more of a, can you do an episode on 4-color Rashmi? Which... we want to include this to say that, yes, we definitely have plans to do an in-depth episode on 4-color Rashmi. We do the special episode series, so there's been a bit of a lull in the special episodes because we've had some scheduling conflicts and technical issues. So we're going to be trying to address those and get back on the regularly scheduled ideal of once per month having a special episode. And 4-color Rashmi is definitely on the list of episodes we'd like to do sooner rather than later. So,
Yeah.
I don't want to overpromise and say, it's next month, but, look for that within the next 3 to 8 months.
Yeah, like trust me, as a show of good faith, I will take as much time as I can possibly get on this podcast to talk about 4-color Rashmi and decks like it. So I'm definitely super motivated to attempt to put a special episode together, right? So
Yeah. And let's get into a more questiony episode, a more questiony question for one of our listener asks. And this comes from listener Gilliam. With the small exception of Gitrog, Yisan, Godo, God, that's a good list right there. And a slew of Tana Timna decks, non-blue is often conflated with non-viable in CDH. Do any of you see this argument becoming stronger or weaker with the printing of Veil of Summer, or possibly brewing of newer, clever farm decks or World Gorger decks, or do we simply need entirely new non-blue commanders? If so, what do they look like?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say that's a small exception, and I think we kind of demonstrated that.
I think, honestly,
But-
I kind of reject the premise of the question a little bit. I made a big show a few months ago when I said I thought black was the best color in CDH, but like genuinely some of the non-black commanders that don't see play are insanely strong. And the fact that they don't see play is kind of a testament to how necessary black is over blue in many ways. Stuff like
what are some of your examples? Yeah.
Derevi is the the text on that card is absurd, and the fact that it's not really playable, or like even to a lesser degree something like Grand Arbiter, or like the struggle that the Jeskai decks have had. Like they're not bad decks with the two new Jeskai commanders, but they're certainly not great decks.
And historically,
yeah.
And
imagine if you had black in Derevi and you could like more easily. I guess that'd give you access to like consult, right? And then Derevi's ability being.
It also just give you access to the pieces you needed when you need them, which would
and also like
nice.
Like cards like Brago has an insane text on him. Like if you could
Brago.
if you could consistently
Brago
find
is
like
insane,
any of the black like permanents that draw cards or like just any of that stuff, he would be absolutely insane, right? Like if you could consistently find the cards that actually make you do things, that card is entirely too good. The same actually with Tigum. If Tigum was blue black,
I was gonna say Tigum is
absolutely
gross.
like disgusting. Like the
What do you mean?
text,
Tigum is blue black.
the card text on Tigum, the card text
Tigam, not Sidisi.
Mr.
Tigum
Technicality.
Ode to Time Master is legitimately absolutely disgusting. That card text should not have been printed. It is like way too good for what it is, and it still doesn't see play because it's in blue white.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It makes dragons uncounterable.
Yeah,
Nutty.
It's way too good.
So on the other part of Gilliam's question, do you see? Do any of you see this argument becoming stronger or weaker with the printing of Veil of Summer, or brewing of newer, clever farm decks or World Gorger decks, or do we need new blue commanders? So I want to kind of pick up on the point of the printing of Veil of Summer and kind of expand that into the printing of new, powerful, non-blue cards. So Veil of Summer and Dockside Extortionist. Yeah.
Man, my one problem with printing powerful non-blue cards is that doesn't mean blue decks won't.
No, that's true. But it certainly can give non-blue decks the tools they need to compete. Like Veil of Summer, like straight up just goes in any blue deck that's also running green. But Veil of Summer does allow non-blue decks to kind of compete or not just be completely blown out on the counterspell front.
Certainly, of course. I personally stand on the we need more powerful non-blue commanders. If I had to pick,
but certainly Veil of Summer has helped, and also people just sort of realizing that the anti-blue cards in red and to a lesser extent green are good. Has if you wanted to build some red a Naya deck, you would actually have a surprising amount of ways of protecting yourself. You could have, both Autumns and Veil of Summer, Pyro and red, and then you could go even deeper.
Ricochet Trap, that's a classic.
I was gonna say Guttural Response, but I guess Ricochet Trap works.
Bolt Bend, nice.
and also more proactive disruption spells. Yes, I'm only half memeing when I mention Fry every episode. That card is actually outside of. If you don't have counterspells, that card is actually very useful against a lot of decks.
Okay, without trying to extend this episode much longer, someone help me convince the Goto Discord that they should not be running Bolt and that they should be running Fry or Sudden Shock instead.
I would.
They don't buy it, man.
Don't want to go on.
I have a repulsion to mono red.
I agree with you, but
Fry hits all the things that you care about, being Aven Mind Sensor, which is the big stopper to the combo, hits Ashiok, which Bolt doesn't hit, counters effectively as a counter to Labman and Jace. also kills things like Zur and Kess. But apparently they don't want to do that because, they love their 1 CMC deal 3 damage. So
Godo is a deck that's
know.
famously has very little mana to spend
Yes.
and lots of things to do with it.
Yeah. So does anyone else have anything to say on this question, or should I?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of extend
close
it
it out?
to, I think we covered this a lot already, but sort of the extension of like non-blue black decks in CDH rather than just like non-blue decks. And sort of like if you're not both blue and black, then you're probably usually going to have issues in some form or another. And I think honestly, for a lot of those decks that like have issues with not having tutors or counter magic, I don't think the printing of any single card for the 99 is ever really going to make a huge difference. Like
if you're not blue or black, you have like a tutor in the command zone.
The issue is that for any color that's not for any color combination that's not blue and black, the only reason a lot of those decks exist is because the commanders pull an incredible amount of weight and do like an incredibly large amount of work compared to some of the generic commanders that see play outside of or inside of the blue black color combination family. So like you really like it's never really going to like the issue is always that like the commander in those decks just isn't efficient enough. So
I mean, I guess getting better commanders could be one card that makes the difference.
I was more like I was talking about like cards that you're getting for the 99 like Veil of Summer don't make the impact. Commanders are going to be the thing that makes the impact. Like it's always my point of view from this always comes from playing Hackball and brewing Hackball average, and the entire time we were building that deck, it was always we're stressing over slots and trying to get everything as efficient as possible and trying to figure out like what's wrong. Why is this not performing this way? Or like, why are we losing these games? And it was never because the cards in the deck weren't good enough. It was because there's an issue in the command zone and it's just too expensive. And you can extend that out to a lot of other decks too, where it's just like, yeah, like everything else is pretty much as good as it can be. And like single card upgrades aren't going to make that much of a difference. The issue is just the thing in the command zone just has this crucial problem.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at Into the North Pod, via our email intothenorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/intothenorthpodcast. Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our long-suffering podcast editor, Roadkill. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, see ya.
Peace.
See ya.
Have a good one.